Bridget McKenzie is the Shadow Infrastructure and Transport Minister. She joins us live from Wodonga. Good to talk to you, Bridget. I want to get on some other issues in a moment, but just firstly, my opening there on energy. At the last election, we haven't seen the two major parties closer together on energy policies now that you're both pushing net zero and talking up renewables. Don't you need to get back to some policy differentiation here and start to outline an alternative route? Because it looks like where Albanese is going to take us on energy is going to lead to just more pain.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And I think you raised some really salient points in your opening remarks. I sat in on the Senate inquiry last week, Thursday and Friday, looking at the legislating of that their climate ambition, their emissions reduction target, and the impact that was going to have, not just on the increased concern around lawfare. Every single one of those environmental NGOs that appeared before that Senate inquiry refused to guarantee that the legislating of that target would stop them actually taking this federal government or future federal governments to court over infrastructure or transport projects or energy projects. And similarly, we heard about the issues around them only pursuing renewable energy rather than looking at all technologies, including nuclear. So we actually had the nuclear scientists appearing in front of the committee that actually really challenged some of the left-wing political classes' attacks on nuclear energy as a source of reliable baseload power generation that is zero emissions, which surely is a win-win for everybody. So Absolutely. That debate is being had.
Great. Sorry. We're going to talk. We'll talk more about nuclear later in the program. Just on the same direction, policy direction, though, the announcement last night from Chris Bowen on electric vehicles and trying to push them. Now, obviously, they got a role. Obviously, people are going to take them up in the cities and they'll be quite useful in some circumstances. But how much government effort and then government subsidies and regulation should go into this, and how are people in the bush going to accept it?
Well, I think we're really seeing with this new Labor government the collision of economics and engineering with aspiration. It's technically not going to be possible. And so that's some of the challenges that they're going to battle up on. You're expecting Australians whose most popular car choice are our fantastic utes and our SUVs. We love our weekends and we like to work hard during the week. Really, we can't find right-hand drive electric versions of those. Australians only like to turn over their cars at the very earliest each decade, so we're not going to get to the targets he set by 2030. And if you look at, say, an MG, you want the petrol version, it's a little over 20 grand. You want the electric version, it's nearly 45 grand. There's a huge makeup in price. Now, that's going to come down over time as people's behaviour changes, but it's just not going to happen as quickly as Bowen thinks it is. So they've released the discussion paper. We're up for the discussion, but you're right. If you live out where I live, you do not have the charging stations or the infrastructure to really support the level of uptake of electric vehicles that this government is wanting to see. And what we don't want to see on our side of politics is the wealthy, mainly in capital cities, being subsidised for new cars regularly at the expense of Australian families and regional Australians.
Spot on. Now, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, obviously we found out about his secret ministerial responsibilities or authorisations. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has this afternoon in his possession, he's getting briefed on the Solicitor General's assessment of all this. Here's what the PM said earlier today.
There's a basic fundamental weakness in checks and balances. If no one knows who the minister is, then how can they be held to account for decisions which are made?
Now, Labor are going to string this out as much as they can, including when Parliament goes back. But the basic principle here is simply some sort of change in the rules or the laws, that any change to ministerial authorisations by the Governor-General should be published, right, in the Gazette or tabled in Parliament or both?
Well, Chris, let's see what that legal advice says tomorrow. I've made commentary last week. I'm a small C Conservative. I have issues with power being concentrated anywhere, and I think transparency obviously is important in good governance, especially when you think about things like ministerial responsibility and cabinet solidarity. So let's see what the legal advice says, and I'm sure there'll be more public commentary coming from that.
Does Scott Morrison need to stand up in the Parliament and apologise to the Parliament and the Australian public?
Look, I think the former Prime Minister has made public comments. He's stated his views quite clearly about why he made the decisions he did when he made them. He's obviously made some calls to colleagues last week to explain to them why he took the decisions he did, and I'll let his commentary stand for what it is.
Surely he should apologise, though, to the public.
Well, Chris, the public made a decision at the last election on who they wanted their Prime Minister to be, and they chose Anthony Albanese. The people of Cook have chosen Scott Morrison to continue on as their local member. That is how our system of government works. Indeed.
We have these little things called elections. Thanks for joining us, Senator. I appreciate it.
Always.
Senator Bridget McKenzie there. I do need to move on, and obviously she doesn't want to call for Scott Morrison to apologise. I think he should. I think instead of defending his actions in a lengthy media conference, he's had that explanation, he should get up there and say this is the wrong thing to do, and we shouldn't let it happen again.